First up tonight, though, I want to look at the housing crisis we have in this country. Now, it turns out the Prime Minister's plan to build 1.2 million houses over 5 years, well, it's come crashing down like some of the building companies in Australia. We all knew that this was probably going to happen. It was always an unachievable target. Building activity, we're told, has now fallen to its lowest level in a decade, with construction bosses saying that the government has no hope of meeting its target, and it's getting harder with the collapse of building firms happening on a daily basis right around Australia, which is really bad for people working in construction and people with unfinished houses. Shadow Housing spokesman is Michael Sukkar. He joins me from Melbourne. This target, Michael, it was always dream time stuff, wasn't it?
Well, look, we were obviously quite sceptical about this target from the Labor government, but nobody thought it would come crashing down this spectacularly and this quickly. It was just a few short months ago that they promised 1.2 million homes. That's come completely crashing down with the latest ABS data, as you point out, that shows that new home builds are down by 22%. In fact, for the Albanese government to meet their targets, they would need to grow that quite considerably. It's not even staying still, it's going backwards by 22%. So it's a humiliating catastrophe really here for the Labor government. And sadly, what it means, Steve, is that if Australians who witnessed or experienced the housing crisis caused by Labor in 2023 thought that was bad, 2024 is set to be even worse.
Michael, there's obviously a lot of people that you can point fingers at here. I mean, at the top, of course, you have a Prime Minister making a promise that he was never going to be able to keep. But I suspect that there are also major problems within state Labor governments around the country. We know the mess that the Labor government is in Victoria, and you've got probably a bunch of left-leaning councils that are also not doing the work that they should do to get construction permits through. Is there any one thing to blame here, or is it just a perfect storm?
Well, with respect to the promise from the Albanese government, they have to be held accountable for that. They made the promise. They knew the environment that they were in when they made that promise to Australians, and now it's just yet another broken promise. But you're right, Steve. There are Labor governments throughout this country who are very good at putting out media releases with aspirational targets at some point in the future, hoping that they're never going to be held accountable to it. As I said, very rarely does it come crashing down this quickly. But the truth is, Labor governments, the former Premier here in Victoria, I think, belled the cat on this from a Labor perspective. He said, oh, well, young people don't want to buy homes anymore, which is utter rubbish. But there's no commitment or dedication from the Labor government federally, or all the Labor governments throughout the country to keeping that dream of home ownership alive. And that dream of home ownership, quite frankly, Steve, starts with having a functioning environment where our building and construction industry can actually build the houses for people to buy and live in, and for many Australians to rent as well. So clearly we're suffering from absent Tasmania wall-to-wall Labor governments, but Anthony Albanese, it's only him who has made the promise that he's now broken. I know we're all getting a bit fatigued by the amount of promises he makes and then breaks on a regular basis, but this one's come crashing down so quickly. It doesn't bode well for Labor's housing crisis in 2024.
The Albanese government's immigration policy is not helping. I mean, bringing the number of people we are into the country, all those people have got to find somewhere to live. That's just making it worse, isn't it?
Well, they have absolutely no idea where the migrants that they're inviting to this country will live. Last year, it was more than 500,000 people, yet we'll be lucky, with the December numbers not being published yet, but probably lucky to have built 170,000 homes. That doesn't even account for our natural population increase. So the numbers don't add up. And I've been saying for a very long time that Australia's migration program's got to work for Australians. And one of those things that it's got to work for is our housing market. And you can't have more people coming into the country than homes that you're building. And here, with this latest data, we're seeing 22% fewer homes being built Yet Anthony Albanese, the gold medalist of migration, ramps up Australia's migration to record levels of more than 500,000 people with absolutely no clue of where those people will live. And the truth is, it'll just make it, and has made it, more difficult for Australians trying to find a rental or Australians trying to purchase their first home.
Michael, the PM's been on some sort of media blitz this week. I've seen him in Queensland. He's been in a couple of places in New South Wales. Then he bobbed up in Adelaide. Then he was in Tasmania. He's been nailed a couple of times on the stage 3 tax cuts. Keeps saying, well, they're legislated and we haven't changed our mind on it. Is he being tricky?
Of course he is. I mean, these tax cuts are coalition tax cuts. We legislated these along with the stage 1 and 2 tax cuts, which provided much needed relief to millions of Australians. Stage 3 tax cuts, which are set to kick in the new financial year. We know Labor hates them. We know Labor would never have legislated them if they are in government. But the question here is, will they seek to repeal them, change them? I think, and I get a sense that that Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers are itching to do it. They're not sure if they can get away with it, which is why Anthony Albanese is squirming his way through all of these answers. I mean, you're quite right, Steve. He's been travelling around the last week, and never has a Prime Minister fronted the cameras so often and yet said so little. He's got nothing to say. He's got no plan for the cost of living crisis that his government is responsible for, which begs the question, why on earth has he been out there if he's got nothing to say and no relief to provide Australians? And all he can do is dodge and weave questions that are very straightforward, which is, are you going to keep the tax cuts that the coalition delivered Australians? And there should be a very unequivocal yes from him. But you're right, we don't get that. We get this squirming, dodging constantly, and I think Australians are getting sick of it.
Yeah, yes is a simple word to say if you're intending to do what you're intending to do. Shadow Housing spokesman Michael Sukkar, great to catch up with you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Steve.